Hey everyone, welcome to the NFL edition of the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast for December 14th, 2016, brought to you by FantasyLabs. I'm Matthew Freeman, the editor-in-chief. I'm joined by podcast regulars Adam Levitan and Peter Jennings on Twitter at Adam Levitan and CSURAM88. And also joining the show is Nick Giffen. You can follow him on Twitter at Rotodoc. He's an editor and one of the lead writers at Rotoviz, a PhD in mathematics, and the number one rated NASCAR DFS player in the world. Vroom, vroom. Nick, how's it going?
Hey guys, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Is that true? Is there a rating system for NASCAR?
Yeah, it's like a DFS Gold or something. I was rated number one for like half the year, and then I fell, I think, to like fifth by the end of the season. But
Yes,
that's because I won like every slate at Daytona in like the first week of NASCAR and just crushed it. And then from there out was like mediocre.
Wow, I'm intrigued.
No, he's very good, and we definitely will get into it a little bit with all the statistical modeling that he does with the mathematics. But Nick, how was Week 14 for you?
It was my best week of the season. It may not have been as good as Peter's over here, in the live final, but I was really sweating a couple GPP wins. I was sweating the 153 max. I was sweating the 100 single entry, and it was with my cash lineup, so that was always a nice feeling. So it was definitely my best week of the season.
That's nice. I'm assuming you didn't have Drew Brees. Peter, how was it for you in New York?
Oh, it was fun in New York. I had a sweat. There's a lot of what ifs, but Brandon Cooks catches the touchdown, had a 400K swing, so that would have been nice. But yeah, cash games are great. Played Le'Veon and David Johnson in all the cash games, and somehow worked out where I had a decent finish in the New York Live final without Le'Veon. So fun times, and felt like it was a pretty straightforward week. My boy Manny Sanders across the board. Had him in tournaments, cash games. My wife was happy, so, that's good.
Yeah, Pete, happy wife, happy life.
Right.
How was it for you?
Yeah, no, I mean, this isn't rocket science, right? You play Le'Veon Bell, you play David Johnson, and you just count the money, you know what I mean? And it's like there's been low-price guys that have played really well. Like, no matter what you did, if you played Le'Veon and DJ, it kind of forced you on to something like Taylor Gabriel, Kirk Cousins, Pierre Garçon, maybe Robbie Anderson or whatever. It kind of forced you onto that, and those guys played well. So anytime that the jam play works with Le'Veon and DJ because the low price guys end up playing well, I'm probably gonna have a good week. So that was fun.
Yeah, well, in terms of skill game propositions, Peter broke out of his non-winning ways with a huge week. Pete, you went 10-2. Everyone else on the week was below 500.
Oh no!
And so, that's the
I gotta talk some smack to A.E. Jones. You gotta post something about the stats so it doesn't come from my Twitter account so I can rub it into A.E. Jones.
Yeah, I'll post something on it afterwards. I was
gonna say I listen every week, and it was surprising to hear Peter have a good week.
Yeah, I just fire out the goods,
Yeah,
I was trying to spur things up, and last week I honed it in. I tried to be shrewd like Levitan over there.
Yeah.
What are the overall standings?
All right, so Pete over there
dead last.
is no. Well, you're 79-8. Well, actually, you are in dead last if we're thinking about percentages. But you're 79-85, so you have the most wins. You're within spitting distance of 500. Levitan is 73-65. I'm 45-40. And then Nick, for the season, our guests are now 75-74. So I think the question is, what is your plan to stay above 500? And then more seriously, can you talk about your DFS approach or process? So you're with Rotoviz, which has a lot of great analytical tools. I use a lot of them when researching for the positional breakdowns. What are the tools that you use when researching?
Yeah, well, first, I think my plan, obviously, is to attack Peter here. I still got to go with the longer-term trends. So I think that's the plan, to keep the guests above 500. As far as the process goes, obviously I use a lot of the Rotoviz tools. I think my favorite ones are the Gillespie apps, which is the game level similarity projections. And it's a really cool app where you can filter out certain subsets of games. You get kind of a representative sample of games. And then the idea is it uses a machine learning statistical algorithm called cluster analysis, and it finds the most comparable running backs or wide receivers or to the player you're looking at, as well as the most comparable defenses to the defense they're facing. And so it'll spit out like the 25 most similar comps, and it'll give you, of those 25, like a low, medium, and high projections. So, like a 25, 50th, and 75th percentile. So it's great for getting like ranges of outcomes of players. That's definitely my favorite. I use our splits apps, which looks at different splits, for example, Drew Brees at home versus on the road, or same with Big Ben. You can look at all those different splits. So those are a lot of my favorites to use at RotoViz. And then as far as my process itself goes, kind of early in the week, I just kind of digest like snap trends or what players might be out or missing and see how that might affect things. And then that way I kind of have a good idea going into the weekend, like, if players are questionable or out, how is that going to affect my decision-making process in that like last hour? And then from there, I kind of set a preliminary cash lineup. I identify games or spots I want to either target or avoid. And then as the week progresses, I definitely get in more like individual level matchup. I use Pro Football Focus, Evan Silva's matchup column. And then I also like Ben Gretsch, another editor right at RotoViz. I like using his betting totals column, which basically takes like the game lines and splits them into like, okay, maybe Miami has projected for 24 points, but here's how many they score on the ground versus how many their opponents allow on the ground and in the air and things like that. And it's pretty predictive. So I like using that. And then obviously just game day, just get right to it.
Yeah, so you're talking about a lot of different, especially with Ben Gretsch's column there, a lot of sort of numerical ways of looking at things, and you have a PhD in mathematics. I think it's obvious how that can help you with DFS. Are there any ways in which you think it might hurt you? Or I guess phrased differently, what are the right and the wrong ways to use numbers when thinking about DFS?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake people make when using numbers is not using the correct, representative sample. They might just look at the season-long trend or the last 5 games trend, but not realizing maybe somebody came back from an injury or different things like that. They just kind of rely on broader numbers without digging into maybe the next level details. And so if you get caught up just in like overall broad trends or follow the crowd with certain numbers, I think it can bite you. Now also, sample size can be an issue as well. There's, of course, the sample size issue. Are we following a 1 or 2 game trend? Is that noise? So that's always something hard to deal with. And then for me, like personally, my struggles with being a math guy doing DFS was when I first started, I relied so much on projections. Maybe a pretty good cash game player, but maybe a pretty terrible DFS player. Luckily, I took a lot of game theory classes as well. And as I got better at DFS and applied my game theory knowledge, I think that's really kind of how I became a much better GPP player these days.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you on the show, and looking forward to hearing especially what you have to say about kickers. So Nick has a kicking model, and Levitan is obsessed with kickers, and we're all obsessed with kickers, really. But let's jump into the format here. So we're focusing on roster construction and game theory. For more content on the slate, check out our NFL dashboard with positional breakdowns out on Thursday and previews for each game out by Friday. All right, Nick, let's start with you. Who are the guys that you are locking into your lineup right now? Or you said you make a tentative cash lineup. Who are some of the guys that you are looking at right now for that lineup?
Yeah, for me, at the quarterback position, I'm really debating either between Colin Kaepernick and Tyrod Taylor. I think it'll probably come down to just some more of those fine details that I look at, but it'll definitely be one of those two. I still want to get on the Le'Veon and David Johnson train if possible. And to do that, you kind of have to get Kenneth Dixon in there in cash games. I think he's probably going to be a guy I lock into my cash game lineups, but I'd like to kind of ensure that he gets some more touches first. And then finally, I like the wide receiver position. I like Stephon Diggs. I think he's still underpriced. I think, I know a lot of us at RotoViz really like him. I think he's probably a top 18 wide receiver, and he's not always, priced up there in that price range, especially with, a few teams missing because we've got a Saturday game and a Thursday and a Monday game. So on that Sunday slate, I really like Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, I like that. And just to put this out there, this is kind of the week, if there's any week in which you're going to go with a sort of non-traditional quarterback in your cash games, this seems like it's going to be the week because you have Ben at Cincinnati, Brady at Denver, Breeze at Arizona, Luck in Minnesota. Like this is the worst quarterback slate of the year. So just kind of putting that out there. Levitan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's funny. I have Tyrod and Cap written down here too. I don't know if they'll be chalk among the kind of general public. I think in our bubble here of kind of nerdy dudes talking about fantasy all week, I think Cap and Tyrod will be very popular. I kind of think that people might try to get on Aaron Rodgers to some degree in Chicago. I think Chicago's defense, despite all their injuries and their suspensions, has played better than I thought they were capable of playing. I think that's reflected in the game total in this game, but they just keep on playing well week after week. So I probably won't be on Rodgers. Totally agree on Tyrod and Cap. I mean, the thing about Kenneth Dixon is like he goes out in this island game and he plays really well. And I want to be sure that it wasn't because of game flow, that it was actually because he's past Terrence West before I say I'm all in on Kenneth Dixon. But he's only 3,800. And then, I mean, the other guy who I swore I would never play, but TJ Yeldon is a guy that when Chris Ivory is out is averaging 6.3 catches per game and 17 carries. And yeah, he's likely to generate like 40 total yards. But if he's going to catch 5 to 6 balls at 4,100 and get 15 carries, like he's kind of hard to ignore in cash. But I do think the ceiling is really low. There's like no touchdown expectation whatsoever with TJ Yeldon. So that was kind of my initial thought. And obviously jam fest with Le'Veon and DJ.
Levitan, I swore you were going to say OBJ right there when you were saying, guy, I swore I would never talk about, but
yeah, it's just hard to play. Don't you think it's just hard to play him? I don't know. I know a lot of people played him in cash on DK last week and kind of got saved by that. Maybe they didn't get saved. Maybe like the dude is just, I'm going to take a 5-yard slant to the house every week, but I'm going to stick with they got saved by another 5-yard slant to the house.
Yeah, it's I mean, well, on the one hand, I think you're right. On the other hand, since like just counting the first month of the season, he's been the wide receiver 1 in fantasy football. So it's, stuff like that happens. Pete, what are your thoughts on the chalky guys?
Yeah, man, I think they hit on everyone. Running back is interesting. I thought the Atlanta guys, first glance might be owned, but after Freeman's disappointing performance, I'm not sure. Coleman's still intriguing. Another guy I guess we'll talk about more when you talk about, pivots from these guys. I think McKinnon also deserves a little bit of conversation compared to Yeldon and Dixon. I probably prefer those guys, but McKinnon also caught 6 balls last week and got a bunch of touches and is facing the Colts this week. So that's another guy I think is interesting. At the quarterback position, I completely agree. Probably going to be saving with one of those quarterbacks. I also think Alex Smith is going to actually end up with a decent bit of ownership as well. He's a little bit cheaper than both those guys. Same kind of situation, obviously, without the same rushing upside. But Alex Smith, I think, might gain popularity as the week goes on. And then you'll have guys like Derek Carr and a couple of these guys who might throw a little bit more. Carson Palmer, I think they might be garnering a little bit of ownership as well. But I think the chalk guys are going to be the 2 top running backs with some combination of these cheap running backs. And then, one of the cheaper quarterbacks, and we'll see at receiver. I mean, the Redskins guys, I guess, is a question. How much ownership do you guys think we'll see on like Garcon and Crowder and all these guys?
It's Monday night, so unfortunately, it's Monday night because they're all in.
That's right.
Yeah, so it's tough to say. If you're playing Sunday, Monday, I do think that the Redskins pass game is in a good spot.
Yeah, I forgot that was the Monday game. Yeah, and outside of that, I mean, there's really not that many receivers I think are going to be straight chalk, but I could be wrong on that. I think the receiver position is probably where the week will be won and lost more so than anything.
Yeah, so we're going to see what happens. Like, we'll see what happens with Julio and Sanu. We'll see what happens if Michael Floyd is going to suit up for Arizona or not. You know what I mean? And I think those things will be big. Will Allen Hurns play for the Jaguars? Like, all that stuff will shape the wide receiver week.
Definitely. Yeah, good points there, Levitan. Let's talk about some of the guys that we would be looking to fade and some of the leverage plays or pivot plays we might want to entertain. And Levitan, let's start with you. What are your thoughts there?
You got to stick with the brand. I mean, hashtag preseason. Kenneth Farrow played 2 times in the preseason, and I thought he played reasonably well. I mean, this Oakland defense, I think, although they have some talent and are capable of playing well, just haven't done it enough for me to be scared. So I don't know what kind of prospect you guys think Kenneth Farrow is. You guys are probably better at that than I am. He looks kind of slow out there, but he's been somewhat productive, and he's only 4,400. So I wish he was a little bit cheaper. Like, I wish he was the same price at Dixon. If he was 3,800, I'd certainly be much more intrigued with Kenneth Farrow. But give me the scouting report, Freeman.
I liked Farrow more than I probably should have, but he's a bigger guy, and I tend to like bigger running backs. He was pretty productive at the University of Houston, but he would get a lot of his touchdowns sort of sniped from his running quarterback there. But he was never a featured part of his offense, but he was always like a competent runner, almost like a poor man's Carlos Hyde sort of, never getting as much as he probably should. But, like, I think he could actually be decent.
I disagree. I don't think he's that great. I hated him in college. Maybe I'm super biased, but I always played Greg Ward, and it was just like whenever Farrow did something good, it was so tilting. I mean, he's just like, he reminds me of like Matt Asiata or something like that in college. It's just so frustrating. But I don't know. I'm not a huge fan.
Well, I mean, so that's the thing. I think that actually is accurate, and I loved Greg Ward in college. And so the thing is, though, like you could look at it from the opposite end. Like Farrell was a guy who would get a decent number of yards each game, and he would have his quarterback still 3 touchdowns. Like if those would have gone to him instead of the running quarterback, everyone would have been like, oh my God, there's this guy who's scoring like 30 touchdowns at the University of Houston.
Right. No, he was really – it was a good college running back. I'm not saying that. He reminds me of Asiata, and I think I definitely was biased because I was always rooting for Ward. So whenever he did something, I was tilted.
Anyway, Nick, thoughts there?
Yeah, well, as far as Farah, I think the receiving is intriguing on DraftKings. So he had 6 catches, 6 targets. If that's going to keep up against Oakland, and Oakland has hemorrhaged points to the running back position over the past 5 weeks, I think he's in play. I don't think he's a guy I may roster in cash or anything. And I think I'll be underweight relative to the field in GPPs, but I do want to get a little bit of exposure to him. If we're talking chalk that I'm going to fade, I think Delanie Walker will probably be pretty chalky because his price is down at $3,900 this week. I think he's priced at if you look at all the games, like Thursday through Monday, he's priced as the 10th tight end. And I think that's too high for Delanie Walker this week. One of the tight end, just like kicker, tight end is another position I really focus on. And team total is by far and away at the tight end position more important than anywhere else. And the team total there in Tennessee is pretty bad. The matchup is pretty bad. So I know the price looks good, but I think I'm still going to probably fade Delanie Walker and try to leverage off him, maybe with like a Rashard Matthews or something who didn't have a great week last week. But I think all of Tennessee in terms of the receivers didn't really have a great week because they just kind of did everything on the ground and with their defense. So Rashard Matthews has still got most of the targets and the market share on that team as of late, and it's been coming up other than this past week, which I think, again, was kind of more of a game script thing. So he lines up on the right about 50% of the time. So he's going to be going up against Marcus Peters, who actually, of the Chiefs defenders, actually allow the most fantasy points per route run. So I think that's an interesting leverage play there. So I think if I'm fading any chalk this week, Delanie Walker is the guy I really want to fade.
Pete, what about you?
Definitely don't mind them. By the way, Kenneth Farrow, 4.59 40-yard dash. Just had to look that one up. That which isn't awful, but just a point of reference. Matt Asiata is what I'm thinking of when I think of him. If I'm going to pivot off the chalk in tournaments, I might get away from some of these running quarterbacks if I really think they're going to be heavily owned between Taylor, Smith, and Kaepernick and pay up a little bit at quarterback. I do think there's some interesting guys like Matt Ryan at 7,300. I don't think a lot of people will be spending at quarterback. And if we do get news that Julio is going to be good to go and playing, I don't think many people will be rostering him just because he hasn't been on the field. We don't have any, recency bias towards him. In fact, it's the opposite. We have recency bias of him getting hurt. So I think there's ways to go different in roster construction that I'll definitely consider a lot in tournaments. Fading Le'Veon Bell and DJ's petrifying, but their price is just ridiculous now. So in tournaments, I certainly think there's merit for that. And it just really comes down to having a different roster construction. You're not going to find a running back straight up that you're going to fade him for, but it's a roster construction where maybe you play 2 out of the 3 cheap guys. Maybe you put one of those guys in, or maybe you go 3 cheap guys and you just load up at the wide receiver position and play the studs and pay up at quarterback. So that's where I'm at right now in terms of potential tournament stuff. But I do think the chalk for cash games is going to be pretty hard to fade.
Now, Pete, you mentioned there the potential for maybe some of the cheaper running backs. There's some guys I'd like to mention here to get thoughts on. So you have Hyde, who's cheaper. He's going against Atlanta. You have Blunt going against Denver, and obviously no one wants to target the Denver defense, but if you're going to, the running game is where you target it. DeMarco is also a guy that looks like he's going to have somewhat lower ownership than some of the other studs. Jeremy Hill against Pittsburgh. Any thoughts on some of those guys as the pivot plays? And Pete, let's start with you.
I don't mind Carlos Hyde. I liked him last week as a tournament play. This game could end up having a decent amount of points. I know the Falcons, I think, are 2 touchdown favorites right now, but I could see some points on both sides. These games have been high scoring in general for the Falcons, so he's probably my favorite of that group. I think the really enticing guys from a roster construction standpoint are going to be the chalk guys we talked about. I mean, if you load up Dixon, McKinnon, Yeldon, some combination of those guys, throw in Farrow if you want to. I think those guys will probably be I'm more intrigued with loading lineups like that and then just absolutely going nuts with some of these receivers. Like, how owned do you guys think, if, let's say Julio was the play, how owned do you think he's going to be? It seems low. Antonio Brown obviously struggled a ton in Cincinnati. He'll be low owned. Mike Evans in Dallas, we'll see. Odell Beckham. I mean, there's a lot of guys, and I know these are different slates too, but there's a lot of guys in the receiver position at the top end that I don't think will be heavily owned. Levitan, do you have a preference on any of those running backs? Is it high for you, or is it one of the other ones?
Yeah, we didn't mention my guy, Lamar Miller. I mean, I know you played him last week in New York in one team, and I got to go back and watch the game. But, like, I think the only concern for me is that how healthy is he? I know
he came out one time. I thought I had Melvin Gordon, and my other team had Miller, and then I saw Miller go to the sideline. And Alfred Blue was getting a ton of run. I was like, oh, God, done. But he came back in to get some snaps.
Right. So that's been the story the last 3, 4, 5 weeks with Lamar Miller. Like, he goes out, he comes back in, but he kind of guts it out. And Alfred Blue, I think, ended up with 16 carries or something like that. And Lamar Miller still got 21. I mean, if we could say Lamar Miller was going to be healthy, I would want to play him. The only other guy in the mid-range there you didn't mention was Jordan Howard, who just continues to get a massive market share of Chicago's touches and a competent Chicago offense. Like, maybe I'm just too high on Chicago in general. I don't know, but they seem to be playing much, much better on both sides of the ball than I thought they would.
And they get Alshon back, right? Or did I make that up?
Yes, 100% get Alshon back in a great spot at 6K.
Yeah, definitely. Nick, any thoughts on some of those mid-range running backs?
Yeah, I think I'm going to take the other side on Hyde and actually not use him. I was all over him last week. He was in that lineup I almost won a bunch of GPPs with. And I think with Atlanta, the backs that tend to do better against them are the pass-catching backs, and Hyde hasn't been catching a whole lot of passes this year. I think he's averaged like 1.7 or something. And it gets even worse when you have Kaepernick as his quarterback versus Blaine Gabbert. It's even lower. And this is something I think Brian Malone showed in the offseason, that running quarterbacks dump off to their receiver or their running backs even less. So it makes me like him a little bit less than and maybe other people would. And I think there could be some recency bias as well, where maybe he's a little bit higher owned because of his big game against New York. So I probably would fade Hyatt a little bit, even though I actually like him. I think maybe Latavius Murray is interesting if Oakland's defense does something against San Diego. I know Phillip Rivers has been a little bit turnover prone and sack prone, and so I think maybe there's some appeal there for like a Latavius Murray and an Oakland D type correlation play. But I think I'm with you guys. Other than that, Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman are two guys I really like.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sean Drone is getting more action. It looks like he is definitely the guy on passing downs I want to use. So I get that, and it always feels bad taking a running back on the road as a 14-point dog.
Let's talk about some of the conventional stacks and what we might be looking at. And Pete, let's start with you.
Well, to stay on brand, I'll go with the conventional stack that I think is the most enticing to me in GPPs, as it is most of the year, and I'll probably go down in flames again. But I like Derek Carr to Amari Cooper. The one concern is San Diego has seen better play out of their corners. I thought when Verrett went down, it was going to be a disaster, but Hayward's actually played well. That's my one pause, but give me Derek Carr and Amari Cooper in good weather and a high total every single week. I'm still on that. I think other interesting ones, I mean, Kirk Cousins, like I said, if you're playing the Monday night, I like him with the other guys. Hard to pick who to stack him with exactly. We'll see the news for Arizona, but Carson Palmer could merit a stack as well this week against New Orleans. I mentioned Matt Ryan to Julio Jones if he plays. The hardest part for me here is just not knowing all the injury stuff. But Tyrod Taylor, Colin Kaepernick, those are guys in general probably just have naked in cash. In tournaments, I don't mind Tyrod to Sammy Watkins. But I'm curious Adam's opinion on that.
Still muted.
Sammy's snap count has gone from 40% to about 65% to 94% last week, and he's getting like double the reps in practice. I mean, he only had 454 with one touchdown, but I think that was somewhat weather-related against Pittsburgh, and that was kind of a neutral matchup. Now, obviously, he gets a very, very plump matchup against the Browns at home, and we'll see on the weather. So I'm for sure intrigued by Sammy Watkins and Tyrod together. I think the conventional stack that sticks out to me somewhat would be Aaron Rodgers to Jordy Nelson, who just continues to dominate in the red zone. It's like, how many touchdowns is Jordy Nelson going to score this year? Like 40? Like every time I turn around, Jordy Nelson is scoring touchdowns. So Rodgers is down at 7,100. That seems a little bit cheap, and I have to look into it more because the team total there and just the overall game total does kind of stand out as lower than I would have thought. Yeah, I think that's the conventional stack is Rodgers to Jordy.
Like that, Nick.
Yeah, I had Carr and Rodgers were kind of, and Tyrod were the three on my list. If you want to get one more quarterback to wide receiver type stack, I think Joe Flacco to Steve Smith or to Mike Wallace is kind of an intriguing play. Flacco's put up 23 plus points in 3 of his last 5, and he gets Philadelphia, who hasn't been as good against the quarterback position lately. They're not really in playoff contention, whereas Baltimore is. So Baltimore's at home. And then, man, both Mike Wallace and Steve Smith could get a little bit of Leotis McKelvin, which I think is a great matchup for them, especially in the deep ball there. So I kind of like Joe Flacco to either of his receivers. But other than that, I'm with both Pete and Levitan here. I like Tyrod and Rodgers and Carr stacks. So those were the 3 I had written down.
What are the places we are looking to be contrarian with our stacks? And Nick, let's start with you. Any that kind of catch your eye?
Yeah, I think if we do want to go with Derek Carr, you can still do the Carr and Cooper, but maybe throw in a Clive Walford. I think that is kind of interesting against San Diego in a game that could shoot out. I like high team total, and so Walford has a high team total there with a good matchup in a game that could shoot out. I think another contrarian spot that I'm looking at might be Carson Palmer and J.J. Nelson with if Michael Floyd doesn't play, and then throw in Jermaine Gresham. He's a guy I really like this week. Again, we're talking about a high team total. He's had over 7.5 fantasy points in each of his last 5, and he's down at min salary on DraftKings at 2,500. If Floyd's out, I really like him to absorb some targets as well. So I think that's probably maybe a contrarian spot I'd be looking at.
Yeah, the extent to which over the last month Bruce Arians has started to rely on the tight end, it's really, I guess, a deviation or a departure from anything that he's done in the past. So seeing Gresham actually get targets is pretty amazing.
I played him in cash the last 2 of the last 3 weeks. I think I've had him in one cash game team, and a good part of my action. So I liked him. I mean, you've been desperate for savings at tight end to fit in DJ and Le'Veon, and he's getting targets. I mean, I like that call quite a bit.
Yeah, he is getting targets. Pete, let's go to you.
I mean, again, I think this is just a roster construction spot. I've talked about it extensively already, but I think paying up at receiver this week is a great way to be contrarian. I think everyone's going to pay up for running back. People are going to think about Le'Veon Bell going for 500 points, and they're going to jam him and DJ in. So I think paying up is the most interesting thing. I'm curious just on how these guys rate out. Is Larry Fitzgerald going to be owned at all this week? I don't know. He had a bad week last week, so maybe he's not. I don't. I just have no real feel for some of the mid to upper tier guys, and then the upper tier guys for sure I know aren't going to be owned. I mean, Levitan will bring down OBJ's ownership on his own throughout the week by just talking about how bad he is. So
I said last week he was a good play. I just said he's not for me. What are you going to do?
Levitan, any thoughts on Fitz?
Yeah, so I don't think people are going to be on him. I think people are starting to kind of get a seed plan in their head that the Saints defense is better. And I think that's somewhat accurate. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but just off the top of my head, they've played significantly better over the last month or so. And maybe that's a fluke, maybe not. But at the same portion, I think people have understood that it's 10 time for Carson Palmer, and that's really hurt Larry Fitzgerald, who also slowed down dramatically at the end of last year also and appears to be doing the same this year. I don't see Michael Floyd's absence being a huge factor in terms of Larry Fitzgerald or Gresham's market share, really. I mean, Michael Floyd's been on the field the entire game the last 2 weeks, and he's seen 7 targets or something, and he's caught 3 balls. It's the dude's not even out there. So I didn't really have Fitzgerald on my list as somebody I was considering. I'm much more interested in the Michael Crabtree, Sammy Watkins, Alshon Jeffrey kind of tier if we're coming off of those top guys. For my contrarian stack, I'm obviously staying on brand. Hopefully Julio's out and get on Matt Ryan to Aldrick Robinson for all the money. And I will go to my grave saying Aldrick Robinson would have had a monster game. If Falcons D didn't score 18 touchdowns, Aldrick Robinson would have just gone completely ham. He was the one playing Julio's role. He was the one getting stared down by Matt Ryan. He was always open. Aldrick was going to have a really big game if the scoreboard cooperated.
I love that call there. Aldrick Robinson, one of the pets of Shanahan. If we are in a situation where Julio doesn't play this week, although it looks like he's going to, or maybe he's limited. Any thoughts on going with Aldrick Robinson again, but also adding in like Taylor Gabriel and like Tevin Coleman? I mean, like just kind of like totally stacking against the 49ers.
Right. So the Falcons team total right now is 32.5, which is one of the bigger ones I've seen all season, and it's 5 points more than any other team total of the week. Gabriel is not the kind of player I typically like to play, and I wrote about this in my lineup review article. It's like, and I think Mike Clay tweeted something, too, about like total outliers, like guys that don't play very many snaps but are very productive in a small sample, like Tyreek Hill, like Gabriel. It's just not really my style to play these guys. So now that Gabriel is 5,600, like I don't really see a way that I can play him even if Julio is out. But yeah, in terms of playing Aldridge if Julio's active, I don't know about that just because I think majority of Aldridge snaps will come at the X position, which is where Julio normally plays.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense there. Let's get to some of the bold calls. Guys, last week, I believe we were 1 for 4. And, of course, Pete, I think you abstained. Our guest abstained. I guess I can tolerate abstention, but in general, we want to be bold here. Nick, do you want to start us off with some bold calls? One that is DFS related, and then one that has more to do with real football or a game.
Yeah, I'll start off. I'll start off with the DFS one, and this is going to be kind of a contingent one, so I'll give you my contingency. If Michael Floyd is out, Jermaine Gresham finishes as a top 10 tight end. If Michael Floyd is not out, then one Jaguar is a top 12 wide receiver this week.
Interesting there. Which one?
Yeah, see,
the best wide receiver on the Jaguars or Allen Robinson?
You mean Marquise Lee? Yeah. I kind of like him. But it also depends on the Hearns news, So
right.
I don't know. One of them will be. That's my bold call, so I'll be playing both of them.
All right. And in terms of a game call, Nick?
Yeah. So I think this, Arizona-New Orleans game goes under by a full touchdown. So I think it's like 50 or 50.5 right now. So we'll say 43 or less. And Arizona wins by at least a touchdown. That just seems like the right call. Drew Brees on the road. I bet the under for the Saints on the road basically every game this year, and I think it's like 4-2. But it's interesting. It's kind of time zone related, so I think this is a good spot. Arizona this year at home, they've only allowed an average of 14.1 points at home, so I kind of like this game to go under.
I like that. Levitan, let's go with you.
I will say Alshon Jeffrey, although he's now off of whatever PEDs or whatever he was on, comes right back, gets into a rhythm with Matt Barkley and goes over 100 yards for the DFS call. And for the real-life call, I mean, Houston played their Super Bowl last week. Houston, they called this game 7. They said that this was the game they had to have. They had to beat the Colts and kind of gain control of the AFC South. And now they come home, and why would they be up to play the Jaguars at home? I don't think that they will be. I think the Jaguars will come in there and kind of shock them a little bit. So I will take the Jaguars to get the outright W as my bold real-life call.
Nice.
All right, well, there's a couple things that are interesting this week. For the game, I'm going to stay on brand. I mean, at the Broncos as a home dog where they've dominated the Patriots at home, so I'll stay with that. Although I'm not going to the game, so this is the first Broncos game at home where they play the Patriots I've missed in like the last 4 or 5 years. So that's a bummer. But, yeah, I'll go with that. Patriots look good, angry Tom Brady, all that narrative. Everyone wants to get on Brady's nuts again. So I'll take the Broncos at home. And then for a real-life call, there's a couple of things I think are intriguing. To stay on brand or in the same light, I'll go with Amari Cooper as a top 5 receiver this week. Another one I would want to call is Emmanuel Sanders having another big week, but I guess that's not bold considering he put up over 30 fantasy points last week. So those are my calls as of now. Maybe I'll have a little bit more bold stuff here in the skill game props.
Yeah, I hope so. Let's get to it. Some 6 packs of Coors Light are bound to be put in action. Pete, let's start with you since you are really the volume guy. What do you have?
Yeah,
I got one. Let me say, I think Pete's going to jump on this. I'll take Farrow over Yeldon straight up.
Farrow over Yeldon. All right, done. Sure. I'll take Yeldon.
Yeah, I kind of want Farrow's side.
Take it.
Yep,
Okay,
I got it.
I'm going to take Farrow.
All right. Get to short this guy. He'll tell me even more. It's great news.
Like I said, I'm just going opposite of Pete.
All right, so you're just going to take the opposite here.
Maybe.
I'll take trying to think about like the quarterbacks. You guys are really high on Kaepernick. I wouldn't mind taking someone against him. It's just hard. I would take Alex Smith over Kaepernick. You guys, anyone want that?
I want that. Yeah,
That's fine. I mean, when's the last time that Alex Smith like really had a good game? Like really had a good fantasy game? Like he never throws for more
week
than
one. Week one.
Week one, right? Yeah.
And that's because it went to overtime.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just not a fantasy quarterback. And I know a lot of people are going to play him this week. I mean, I understand it. It's just, to me, he's just not a fantasy quarterback. Like, at least Kaepernick and Tyrod could run for $100.
Yeah, I'm giving away the equity, but that's fine. He had a decent game versus Tampa Bay, but yeah, he's not going over 20. He's probably projected for a couple points less than Kaepernick, but I'll go with Alex Smith.
Yeah, I'm going to take the opposite side of you, Pete.
All right. Well, someone else take the lead here. So I'm just giving away equity as usual.
I'll take Rivers, and you guys can have two people under 6K.
Okay. Tyrod Taylor, Kaepernick.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm on that too with Pete, actually.
That's
Thank
right.
you. Finally, Levitan giving some generosity right there. I love it.
I'll give out
Yeah, I
the
like
You said 2 under 6,000?
Yeah, whoever scores the most out of the 3.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be unoriginal here, but I think those are the 2 you got to take. Yeah, I'm taking those 2.
Yeah.
For Freeman, why don't you throw something out there, buddy? You're
Okay.
lurking over there pretty nicely.
Okay, I'll take OBJ, and you guys can take whoever else you want.
On the entire board?
Yeah, anyone else on the entire board.
Only at wide receiver?
Wide receiver.
I'll take Antonio Brown. I mean, are we really poo-pooing Antonio Brown because he's had a couple bad games? I mean, Cincinnati has, like, dominated him, which would concern me. And obviously Ben's road splits are among the worst in the league. But I still think Antonio Brown's a way better play than Odell.
What about Mike Evans? I don't know. Mike Evans is close too.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead and take whoever you want. I just think Odell Beckham at home against Detroit. Detroit is one of the worst passing defenses in the league. Antonio Brown is horrible, not horrible, but like on the road in division, like against Cincinnati. Like Antonio Brown has home road splits that are negatively impacted because of Ben Roethlisberger. And then Julio, I mean, who knows what's going on there? Evans, it's not – I mean, Evans is good, obviously. He has the potential to go off in any game. I just think on the road in Dallas, I think Dallas will be looking to bounce back. I think they will put more of their focus on him because there really is no one else in that Tampa Bay offense that they have to worry about.
Yeah, I think I'm curious what Nick thinks about the Mike Evans thing. We've seen him struggle in the past with extra defensive attention. You know, I feel like this happened last year after Vincent Jackson went out. He's like, the more that he gets double teamed and triple teamed, the really he seems to struggle with it. Maybe that's #narrative street, but I'm wondering if there's any numbers on that whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, I think it's pretty close for me between Evans and Odell. I think Evans is probably a guy who will like hit his average or something like that, to maybe go a little bit above. And Odell, I think, you know, Detroit's been so much better against the wide receiver position the last 5 weeks. They're allowing it's like 7.8 points under the wide receiver season average. So like that's adjusting for the skill of the wide receivers. So I kind of like the Mike Evans side here, but I think it's close enough that I'll probably abstain from this one.
All right, give me Mike Evans. Sold.
Go for it. And Levitan, you want Antonio?
Yes, Antonio, please. Thank you.
Sweet.
I'll take David Johnson over Le'Veon Bell if anyone wants that.
I'm on the David Johnson side.
Yeah. What about the
We currently have.
Let me throw out one.
Okay,
We don't do enough tight end props. I'll take Jermaine Gresham over Delanie Walker. Maybe you could also give me Selleck with Gresham. One of the two over Delanie.
That's fine. I'll take Delanie there.
Man, such a bad matchup with Barry for Delanie Walker.
Yeah, I think the thing about Delanie is it is an awful matchup, but he is at least like a primary receiver. And I'm not sure I'm going to play him either, but it's really tempting at 3,900 to play a dude who is like the quarterback's primary guy.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll take the Delanie side of that.
I'll go Gresham. I'm gonna take the other side. I'll go Gresham and Selleck.
I like it.
All right. Pete, you were throwing out was it Johnson versus Le'Veon?
Yeah.
Eh.
I'll also, if you let me, I'll take. I would need. Let's see here. Yeah, I'll do this. I'll take 2 running backs. You can have either Le'Veon or David Johnson. I'll take 2 to have one of them have a higher score. I'm not sure. Normally it's the other way, but Le'Veon and DJ have just been so good.
Okay.
Which side do you like on that, Levitan? Which side do you think's better?
No, I always think having the 2 versus the 1 is typically better. Yeah, I would take the 2, especially with the spot that LaShawn McCoy's in, right? We didn't even talk about LaShawn McCoy.
Yeah.
Yeah, McCoy and Zeke is pretty nice. I was looking at both. I mean, that's a pretty good combo.
Yeah.
All right, so it sounds like everyone wants the 2. Is there anyone who wants the 1?
I'll take it just for action. I'll take the 1 side with Le'Veon.
Okay, I'll take LaShawn and Zeke.
I'll take. How about this? I'll take the 1 side with David Johnson.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, and I'll do. I'll do McCoy and Zeke. I mean, it's hard to go away from those 2.
So the thing on DJ, former guest David Kitchen brought up today, and I have no idea if this is true or not, or if it will be true, but now that the Cardinals are like officially done, do they scale it back on DJ? I mean, he's been playing like literally every snap. Like, is there any thought that they scale it back on DJ a little bit?
Are they stone drawing dead to make the playoffs?
I don't know. I have to look into that.
They're not eliminated, but I mean, they're basically dead.
They're under 1%.
They're less than 1%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just something to think about. I'm not saying that I'm not going to play DJ. I probably will, but it's just something to think about.
That's a good point. That is a really good point. And Nick, you might have some data on this. Do we have any information on and of course there was a piece on FantasyLabs about this, but any idea on how playoff teams do and non-playoff teams do when we're getting into these final weeks of the season?
No, I haven't really looked at it, but I saw the FantasyLabs piece you mentioned where, the running back and the defense are important. So I think that's kind of why another reason I like Latavius and the Raiders D. And I think this game could shoot out, and I know Bales always likes taking defenses in these high-scoring games, especially the one that's on the favorite side, just because there's a lot of opportunity for picks or pick sixes if they're ahead in a high-scoring game, and they're typically lower owned. So other than that, though, as far as playoff, I'm not really sure, but I think it might make sense in terms of David Johnson maybe getting a little bit of a breather.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Pete, you have any more that you want to throw out there?
I'll take Derek Carr for some players if anyone wants that. I'm trying to think what's reasonable.
I'll take Rivers over Carr.
Okay.
I'll take Rivers there.
Okay. I would take Carr over Roethlisberger too if anyone wanted that.
I want the Carr side on both of those.
Yeah, I mean, I would take almost anyone over Roethlisberger on the road in division.
I'll take RG3. You can have RG3. Or I'll take Roethlisberger. You can have RG3.
How about Palmer? Palmer versus Roethlisberger.
I'll take Palmer, I think.
I'll take Ben over Palmer. I can't have any. I can't breathe on Palmer.
All right, I'll take the guy in the tent.
Yeah, I'm going to take Palmer.
Get him out there.
All right. Yeah, give me Ben.
All right, there's a couple. That's nice. What about let's do some defense here. I'll take my Bronco. I can't take the Broncos versus TD. Damn it.
Does anybody want to take Allen Robinson over Marquise Lee?
Sure.
All right, I'll take Marquise.
Just for action, since you've been so generous this show.
Come on. I'm giving you Allen Robinson, the total freak, versus Marquise freaking Lee.
Marquise Lee's a freak too, bro.
All right,
it's close.
I'll take Marquise, Dad.
All right, let's talk a little defense here.
There's a lot, man. There's like 4 that I think are awesome. Like Houston is obviously awesome. Atlanta,
Seattle's awesome.
Seattle, if you're playing Thursday, is like borderline must play. The Chiefs, I think, are pretty good, even though Mariota's sack rate has gone down. I think the Chiefs and Arrowhead are still intimidating. The Ravens, especially if Jimmy Smith can play. I think there's a lot of awesome defense spots this week. They're all a little bit expensive, but they're all awesome.
Sounds like Nick might like Arizona.
Yeah, I do like Arizona. Who do you want to put them up against?
I like Arizona.
I'll take Ravens over Arizona.
I'll take the Arizona side.
All right, I'll take Arizona there. I'll do Seattle versus any two defenses if someone wants that.
I have to take that. I mean, Seattle's playing real quick. Give me Houston and Kansas City.
Okay. Jump on it, boys. You can. Go ahead.
I'll take Houston and Buffalo.
I'm going to go with Levitan on that. Houston and Kansas City.
Now that they're healthy, like this Chiefs pass rush is like
it's legit.
Yeah.
And they're home, which always helps.
What about Broncos? I want to take Broncos like straight up for someone. Maybe freaking Kansas. I'll take Broncos versus anyone outside of Seattle.
I'll take New England versus the Broncos.
Okay. Nice. Like that.
That's salty right there.
It makes sense. The Broncos are such trash on offense, but
Hey,
yeah.
I had the Simeon, Manny, Demarius stack last week.
I almost had that in one of my final teams. Is the debate at the end. That was one of my choices, but went away from
nuts,
it.
Right? That was like the nuts 3-man stack was last week with Simeon, DT, Manny, I think.
Yeah, my buddy Tony had him. Big T.
Yeah, Big T had it, but he didn't have much with it, right?
No, I didn't have Le'Veon with it.
Yeah.
So, Pete, you still want Denver?
Yeah, I'll take Denver. You can take anyone else. Just don't take Kansas City or Seattle. I don't want to be going against Kansas City because that'll probably be the defense I take the most this week.
What about Houston?
Sure, you can have Houston if you want it. That's fine.
Yeah, Houston.
I'll take New England.
Yeah.
I'll stick with New England.
Houston is a chalk D, but go with it.
Do we want to go where we've never gone before and entertain some kicker props?
Let's do it.
I just want Nick's kicker model. How much for your kicker model, Nick? Let's get out the wallet.
Man, just subscribe to Rotoviz.
Nice. On brand right there.
No, right. I do want to go down the kicker path. Real quick, does anybody want, if I take 4-bath, does anybody want any 4,500 or 4,600 kicker versus me?
I have to click over the FanDuel button.
Pretty sure not. 4-bath in that range. Let me see what I have over here. Pretty sure not.
You can have Lambo.
I'll take Nick Novak.
He's 47.
I can't.
That's fine. I'll give up the equity. 47.
Okay. Novak.
But Novak's a pretty strong play too.
Yeah.
Hopkins is interesting a little bit for Washington. Yeah. I don't know. That's a different set.
Okay, let's see. I don't want to take I really like Prater, but I feel like if I go with Prater and I'm like, take whoever you want, I'm just asking to lose.
Nick, have you found that despite no matter what the spot is, that if you had unlimited money, you'd always take Justin Tucker, like no matter where, how, when, what the total is, what the weather is, like if you had unlimited money, you'd always take Justin Tucker. Is that not right?
Unless there's some crazy weather situation, I'd be taking Justin Tucker pretty much nonstop. There's a metric I've created, which is basically just like a kicker quality metric, and he's literally has one of the best seasons of all time since 2000. That my data goes back to.
Who's kicker number 2 in that list? Like Dan Bailey or Vinatieri? Vinatieri doesn't have the distance, I guess, for fantasy points, but he's had the accuracy for a while.
Yeah, it's Vinatieri right now in that metric.
Is it? How high is Dan Bailey? I know Gostowski used to be up there, but he's had a bad year.
Let's see. Dan Bailey is in 5th. He hasn't had enough accuracy on the longer kicks, I guess.
Okay.
What about these kickers in blowouts? How do you feel about Matt Bryant?
I think this is just gonna be a touchdown game for Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. That's kind of what I think too. Sometimes I'm intrigued by the really high team totals on the kickers. Then I'm like, well, if they're all touchdowns, it's not going to be a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's really all about trying to chase the field goals because even if a team scores 7 touchdowns, it doesn't really get you all that much. So, ironically, it's chasing field goals, which just sounds crazy to try to predict field goals, but It's sort of what it is.
I think this isn't the week, but I think like most other weeks, I kind of like Aguayo just because everybody's so off him. And he was one of the best collegiate kickers of all time. He's definitely going through something mental right now. But if he just ever, kind of figures it out, which I think he has been a little bit more recently, I would use him all the time. I don't think against Dallas is the right spot, but I always tend to like Aguayo if I'm playing on a FanDuel.
Yeah, last week was a good week for him.
Freeman told me to play him last week, and I did. It was amazing. It's so scary when you have that guy and watching him kick because, literally, a 25-yarder, I'm like, God, he might miss this. On his face, it looks like he's worried about missing it.
Dude, I had Aguayo in cash last week. It's amazing. Yeah. I missed that because I was less focused on FanDuel down the stretch when Friedman's normally talking about the GOAT kicker takes. But yeah, I liked him a lot, and he'll regress to being relatively good, I think. Obviously, there's been a lot of pressure, and he didn't adjust well to his rookie year, but the guy was an all-time legend in college. He really was good. There's a reason. I don't say there's merit to being a second-round pick as a kicker, but there's a reason he was the highest touted kicker coming into this year's draft.
Yeah.
I kind of like Catanzaro this week as well. I think they can put up points on New Orleans. He'll probably be low on because he's been absolute shit lately. And but he's at home in a place that the weather really shouldn't be an issue. So we always like the warmer temperatures, and at least relative to a lot of outdoor games this week, Arizona will give a bit of a warmer temperature. Yeah,
that's fair. New Orleans, I think, is top 5 in field goal attempts allowed. So it's a good defensive spot there. All right. Any other props going through your head, Pete? I know you always have props.
No. The props that I really enjoyed. So I was gone last week, and we didn't talk about it much, but the quality of the video wasn't as high. The internet was a little shaky. I was out there for some tennis props. That was incredible. Doing stuff on golf now. Joe Ingram. We had a long dinner with Sahil and him, and now they have a prop bet on if he can write a 40,000-word book. And I want some props on some really random stuff. That's what I'm really into right now. But,
NASCAR props. Let's do it.
I might actually be. I know Pit Row, the company Pit Row.
Yeah,
I know those guys. Maybe I can get a little. Maybe I can follow them around or something. There you go. They get it into 90 cents on the dollar instead of 0 cents. But
there you go.
Yeah, I have no other NFL stuff. I'm out. Actually, I'll do this. I'll take Emmanuel Sanders versus someone. I'm always down to do that.
Let's do that. Who are you? What are the restrictions on that?
I'll take the Sanders side versus Sanders versus Diggs.
I'll take Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, just anyone cheaper than him. I think that's reasonable.
That's fair. I'll take Sanders.
Same price or cheaper.
Ooh.
Are we using DraftKings or FanDuel for this?
You can use either. Screw. I'll let you have that even.
Yeah, DraftKings. I want Stephon Diggs.
Okay, DraftKings scoring. There's some other good guys under there. I don't really like the matchup thrown against Jacksonville, but DeAndre Hopkins is there. You got Julian Edelman in the same game. Alshon, Diggs,
Sammy Watkins.
Yeah.
I need to watch that Minnesota game again, Nick. Was there a reason, do you think, that Diggs was so under-targeted against Jacksonville, or was it just the matchup was bad and that's kind of the way the game went?
Ramsey's a GOAT, bro.
Yeah, Jalen Ramsey's good. I was a little bit on Diggs last week because when Ramsey was playing the slot earlier in the year, he wasn't as good as when he's been outside, and I figured maybe going in the slot he wouldn't be as good against Diggs, but turns out he's good everywhere these days.
Yeah. I feel like Adam Levitan is coming on and stealing some of Steph Diggs' thunder, as crazy as that is to say.
It's a trap.
I'm not playing Levitan, but I don't think I'm playing Diggs either. So...
All right. Well, we got that booked. I got Emmanuel Sanders. Wife got home. She's hearing that. She's got to be happy. Happy wife.
There you go.
All right, guys. Thanks for being on the show. We've been speaking with Nick Giffen, Adam Levitan, and Peter Jennings on Twitter at Rotodoc, Adam Levitan, and CSURAM88. And you can follow me on Twitter at MattFOracle. I'm Matthew Freeman, and this has been the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast for Week 15. If you like the show, please rate and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Podbean. And don't forget to check out our NFL dashboard with positional breakdowns out on Thursday and previews for each game out by Friday. Thanks for tuning in. Good luck, and we will see you next week.